If you were God, and your delusions could become reality, what delusions would you wish for? A sensual world? A despotic society? Destructive sanctions? Or... Hello everyone, Noah Novels here, and for today's video, I will be reviewing the visual novel that is equal parts sci-fi and psychological horror known as Chaos Head Noah. Chaos Head Noah is a re-release of the visual novel Chaos Head, which was released on April 25, 2008, with Chaos Head Noah releasing on February 26, 2009. Despite being the first entry in the beloved science adventure visual novel series, Chaos Head Noah would not go on to receive an official English release by Spike Chunsoft until October 7th, 2022. For this review, I read through Chaos Head Noah with the Committee of Zero overhaul patch, which is a patch made by fans, which includes multiple improvements to Spike Chunsoft's localization, such as a script containing terminology that is consistent with the rest of the science adventure series, something I feel is especially important as this is the series' first mainline entry, restoration of censored or cut content, translated CGs, and more. They also have a similar patch for every other mainline entry in the Science Adventure series with an English release, aside from the recently released anonymous code as of making this review. In this video, I will be discussing why I think this exhilarating visual novel with one of the most fascinating main characters I have ever seen is very much worth your time, while keeping away from spoilers so you can best experience the story knowing as little as possible beyond the basic premise and characters. With that all being said, let's start talking about the story of Chaos Head Noah. Chaos Head Noah is set in the year 2009 in the Shibuya district of Tokyo, which is where our shut-in main character, Nishijō Takumi, lives. Takumi has no interest in the real 3D world though. He would rather spend all his days playing online video games and watching anime while surrounded by his collection of waifu figurines, which includes Saber from Fate Stay Night, and hey, at least the man's got good taste. Takumi is so averse to real-life people and interactions that he has even made himself what he calls a minimum attendance chart, a chart showing just how many days of any given week he has to attend school to meet the bare minimum to graduate. And even when he does attend school, he makes no attempt to socialize and make friends, spending his school days in as much isolation as possible, often passing time by viewing over-the-top delusions that can make his everyday life seem as zany as any anime out there, something that he indulges in throughout the entire story. This lonely existence that Takumi not only enjoys but seems to take pride in is quickly disrupted one night while he is talking with an online friend of his named Grim. Grim alerts Takumi to a series of bizarre serial murders in Shibuya known as the New Generation Madness. As if that isn't disturbing enough, another online user who goes by Shogun sends Takumi an image of a man pinned to a wall with stakes. And from here, a story of solitude, paranoia, bizarre science fiction, gruesome killings, and growth finds its way seeping into Takumi's life. As strange and scary things begin happening around him and he meets people equally as strange and scary. And how can Takumi, a shut-in otaku, have any hope of keeping his sanity when his reality becomes more bizarre than the anime-inspired delusions he spends so much of his time lost in? This is Chaos Head Noah. Chaos Head Noah is a claustrophobic story that blends psychological horror and sci-fi seamlessly thanks to its immaculate writing and presentation. The way Chaos Head Noah manages to make you feel the crushing loneliness and terror of Takumi is something truly impressive. Just take a look at Takumi's actual home, a literal metal box, or more specifically, a cargo crate. Just as how Takumi isolates himself from others, his very residence is a reflection of who he is as a person. Dark, cramped, and suffocating. Takumi has some less than stellar thoughts about the regular people he occurs in his everyday life, or DQNs as he calls them, especially women, thoughts that are no doubt a result from a massive amount of time spent alone, and false expectations he has received from anime and video games. These thoughts can be mildly amusing at times to downright despicable, a reflection of a disturbed individual in desperate need of change, one who is often suffocated by self-imposed delusions or contemptible behavior. This fascinating aspect to Takumi's character is reflected wonderfully in his actual place of residence, and this level of care and intention is present throughout every aspect of the game. The janky way the camera moves implying where exactly Takumi's gaze is focused, the writing balancing absurd internet slang with intricate character development, the fantastic sound design and music further immersing you in the restless city of Shibuya, which is becoming a stage for terrifying murders Takumi can't seem to escape. All of this comes together for a story that feels frantic and dangerous. And what better words to describe a seemingly average high school boy becoming entangled in a series of horrific murders? That is far from the only thing this story has going for it though. Another highlight to this engaging story is none other than the main character himself. Nishijō Takumi, as I've already said, is a lonely and less than upright character. Along with being just plain pitiful at times, he says and thinks some truly reprehensible stuff, especially if it involves women. I mean, how can you not say the most vile things imaginable when you have Saber from Fate Stay Night with you whom no real-life woman can ever compare to? Guys? Why is no one agreeing with me? Jokes aside, his character can be truly loathsome at times. From his obnoxious use of internet slang in inappropriate real-life situations, to his complicated, to say the least, thoughts on women and other people in general, to his everyday lifestyle and of course, how he responds to events as they unfold in the story. And this writing? It's fantastic. Is it played up a bit much? Sure. But this type of lifestyle and behavior is a genuine problem that people struggle with in life. Self-isolation, whether due to social anxiety, lack of free time, fear of the unknown, or any other reason is unhealthy and can only lead to an unfulfilling future. This real-life problem is addressed tactfully as Takumi finds himself feeling more alone than ever as these surreal murders and other occurrences take place around him, seemingly even targeting him after a certain point. Seeing if Takumi can overcome his nasty personality, his insecurities, and his fears as the murders around him ramp up as he also meets the wonderfully weird cast of characters is really compelling. And what this results in is a profound story about the importance of relationships, whether that be with friends and acquaintances, familial relationships, or romantic ones. Life can be a scary and painful thing, but one thing that makes it worth living is the connections and bonds we form with the people around us. We shouldn't expect these other people to shield or protect us from the harsh nature of life, but having them there with you, supporting you, it can make a world of difference. And just as they were there for you in your darkest time, you can be there for them when they're facing adversity. That's part of the beauty of life. Putting aside all that, it's also just fun to meet new people and make new connections. And this is coming from someone who is extremely socially awkward. You open yourself up to all sorts of new experiences as you interact and get close to different people from different walks of life. And if you're lucky, you can find someone with similar interests and passions to yourself. And being able to talk about the things you love back and forth with someone who's just as interested and passionate as you are, well, that can make every day seem brighter and more lively. Anyways, I'm rambling and starting to get a little too philosophical, so to get back on track, Chaos Head Noah offers a powerful story about the dangers of self-isolation and the beauty of relationships. And it does this near perfectly with Nishijō Takumi and his character writing throughout the story. Does his repulsive thoughts and behaviors make reading scenes sometimes difficult? Absolutely, but that's the point of the story. You're not supposed to like Takumi as a person or necessarily even root for him at the beginning, because it's only when the story starts intensifying and showing the man behind his aloof and perverted personality do you begin to understand and sympathize with him. Is Takumi a likable character going into Chaos Head Noah? Absolutely not. But is he a well-written character who is crucial to conveying the themes and messages of the story? Without a doubt. And that is why Nishijō Takumi is one of the most well-written and fascinating main characters I've ever seen, in visual novels or any medium of storytelling. Making your main character unbearable is a risky move for any type of story, as you risk losing your audience or viewers over frustration regarding said character. Chaos Head Noah, though, tackles that gambit head-on, and tells a unique and ambitious story with so many different moving parts in its writing and presentation that all come together to make an unforgettable visual novel. One of the other fascinating aspects to Chaos Head Noah's story is the use of delusions within its narrative. Let's discuss. As I said before, Takumi spends quite a bit of time in his own head, cooking up absurd and bizarre delusions. This happens quite often throughout the story, and it's up to the player to decide if you want to have Takumi experience a positive or negative delusion. Positive ones, if a female character is involved, will often turn lewd extremely quickly, and if not, They're just fun what-if scenarios that Takumi comes up with for the sake of it. Negative ones, on the other hand, will more often than not see things take a violent or distressing turn quicker than you can say, "Get this boy some therapy." And of course, you always have the option to keep Takumi grounded in reality and experience no delusion at all. I really like this mechanic. It's a fun way to make ordinary scenes pop out a bit more, and it is an interesting way to see Takumi's true thoughts and feelings in certain situations, as opposed to whatever he may be saying to whoever he's around. I can see how to some it may seem like a pacebreaker, especially in more intense moments, but that's why I like having the option to view no delusion at all. I can keep the story moving along if I so choose. And Takumi's quick escape into his delusions to escape whatever he's facing in reality is yet another fascinating aspect to his character. Where this all starts to get really interesting, however, is when the murders and occurrences around him become more and more bizarre. The border between delusion and reality starts to blur, and readers have to wonder just how much of what we're seeing is grounded in reality. Is this seemingly normal high school girl really carrying around such an outrageous-looking sword? Or is this yet another illusion of Takumi's? Hell, even Takumi himself starts to doubt the validity of what he's experiencing. After all, who is going to help him confirm what he's seeing and feeling? As Takumi lives completely alone and spends most of his time in the make-believe world of anime and video games as opposed to real life. And don't get me wrong, I love me some fictional media as much as the next guy. I did spend quite a lengthy time reading this VN after all. But when you're so invested and preoccupied with fiction that you start to lose your grip on reality, well, there might be a problem, especially if a series of strange and violent murders seem to be happening around you. How Chaos Head Noah manages to keep you guessing on the true nature of everything that is happening is really great. The use of delusions and how they factor into the story not only makes it so readers have to keep guessing what's truly going on, but it also offers an interesting meta-narrative about the real power that fiction can have in our lives. And all of this is bundled together with a story with some of the most intense, dreadful, and disturbing pieces of horror I have ever read. Reading certain parts of this visual novel genuinely made me nauseous, and that's something that not even the esteemed horror visual novel series Higurashi When They Cry was able to do to me. And what's great about this is when the story does start delving into its sci-fi aspects more and the greater scope of the narrative, it never intrudes on these horrifying aspects. They just recontextualize or add on to them in really interesting ways. I really enjoyed the science fiction elements and concepts tackled in the story. I would be lying to you if I said I understood 100% how everything works exactly, but the story does a good job of making sure that even if you don't understand the mechanics fully, you do understand that A leads to B and why that's important. And even as the story gets more complicated with these ideas, I was still able to keep up and enjoy the culmination of all these things by the finale of the story. So aside from this visual novel making me regret getting a film degree, as I now think that I should have studied quantum mechanics so I can fully understand the stories to a bunch of science fiction anime PowerPoint games, I really loved the sci-fi elements to Chaos Head Noah's story. Given I am a science fiction fan in general, but the concepts introduced and utilized in the story were fascinating, and set up an ambitious story with an ever-expanding scope. And I can certainly see how such a successful franchise of visual novels was born from the groundwork laid by this story. Up to this point, I've mostly talked about the story as a whole and Takumi's character, but there are several heroines in this visual novel, all of whom are crucial to the story in their own way. And with the Chaos Head Noah re-release, they all get their own mini-routes. These routes branch off the main story, and you can access them by triggering certain delusions, and then answering a bunch of yes or no questions in specific ways, and honestly, I would just recommend using a guide because most of these feel so random to me. I guess I just don't understand the necessity of saying I want to be stepped on by Sena to access her route. Maybe I'm illiterate. But anyways, these are all relatively short stories that mostly act as interesting what-if scenarios that won't take up more than 2 hours of your time each. And they're a bit of a mixed bag. I do think these all offer some entertainment value or interesting information that makes them all worth reading, especially with their relatively short length, but a lot of these pale in comparison to the quality of the writing in the main story. They're not bad on their own, but after witnessing how expertly written and satisfying the common route and its themes are, these can feel like a bit of a downgrade. That being said, I did still mostly enjoy my time with them, but a couple of them did test my patience. What's really odd about these routes though is some of them contain really crucial information to these characters that you just don't get in the common route. You get these little sprinkles of information, and by the end of the story, some of these aren't fully explained or utilized in the narrative, which obviously, the charm of a visual novel partially comes from how you can disperse various story beats into different branching paths to form one cohesive story by the end. But these routes weren't present in the original release of Chaos Head. From my understanding, the original Chaos Head release simply had the common route, an alternate ending called Crying Sky, and the final true ending. which means this information that really changes how you look at some of these characters just didn't exist in the original release. And to me, that leaves this story feeling a bit incomplete. Now, I'm not going to dock any points from the review of this visual novel, because the version I am playing does have this added story content, but I do find it odd. But anyways, to give my really brief and spoiler-free thoughts on each of the character routes, Nanami's route I found to be predictable, but still enjoyable for the story and conflict it has to offer. And the ending is especially interesting. Yua's route started off strong, dragged a lot in the middle, but did include a really powerful ending, which I enjoyed. Ayase's route is extremely interesting with the story it tells, but the pacing does kill the vibe a bit for me. That being said, the ending is really great. Also, Goth Girl Supremacy makes it automatic peak. Kozue's route is one that kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time, and the way it explores Kozue's character is something else. In a good way, I mean. Seina's is possibly my favorite, with the most memorable ending, and her route especially leans into the whole what's real and what's a delusion aspect to Chaos Head's story in such an interesting way. Not to mention, I feel like some of the info disclosed in her route has some big implications for the Science Adventure series at large, and I'm a sucker for long-term storytelling like that. And lastly, Rimi's route is a great exploration of her character, and the ending is equal parts exciting and beautiful. My only complaint with her route is I feel like they could have actually made it longer in certain aspects, but I am still very happy with what we did get. All of these routes have something interesting to offer, and I'm glad they were included in the story. That being said, I do wish that the important information and character development in these routes could have been incorporated into the main story in some way. I don't know how it would have worked, but some of these characters go through some pretty drastic changes and development that would have been great to see in the main story. Because as all these heroines are without these routes in the main story, I mean they're still interesting and serve the story well, but most don't go through noticeable character development until the very end of the story, and I just feel like seeing the aspects to these characters explored through their routes in the actual main story and ending would have made for an even greater experience. And then you could still have the routes to have more time with these characters without breaking the pace of the story. But as it is, they were all still very interesting reads. Some were better than others, but seeing how Takumi at different stages of his character development, depending on when in the story a particular route branches from, would react to the escalating and adverse situations presented in these routes was very engaging. And while they're not all home runs, I would still say that it is worth reading all the character routes in Chaos Head Noah. So to summarize, Chaos Head Noah offers a gripping psychological horror character study of a flawed but compelling main character, as a series of grotesque and bizarre murders forces him to question what is even real, as he meets multiple outlandish heroines spouting just as outlandish scientific concepts that sound like they came straight out of an anime. The horror and intensity never stops though, even as the sci-fi concepts begin to explain the mysteries while also elevating the stakes to higher degrees. The personal and emotional journey of Nishijō Takumi never getting lost in the escalating scope of the story. You also get a fascinating group of heroines who contribute to the story in meaningful ways, and who get proper focus and development in individual story routes you can access after your first read-through of the common route. While it would have been nice to see certain aspects of their characterization and growth from their individual routes present in the common route, this is Takumi's story, and how each of these characters pushes Takumi along the chaotic events of the story is commendable. Pair this all with occasional shifting perspectives to offer unique viewpoints on the story that isn't coming from a delusional otaku's perspective, such as various heroine intermissions that pop up when you unlock a certain story route, and you have a story that's exciting, terrifying, and profound. One with a finale that comes full circle in a thematically satisfying way. What a strong first entry to what would become a beloved visual novel series that has gone on for 15 years since. Let's start talking about Chaos Head Noah's artwork and overall presentation. The artwork and overall presentation of Chaos Head Noah is genuinely fantastic. Now obviously, this is a visual novel that originally released in 2008, so it's not going to have artwork as eye-catching or gorgeous as, say, the most recent entry to the Science Adventure series as of recording this video, Anonymous Code. But that doesn't stop this visual novel from just being a feast for the eyes. And I'm not just talking about in Takumi's positive delusions. The character sprites are all well drawn and expressive. Somehow, even just the tiniest shift of a character's gaze or the position of their hands says so much with so little in this VN. And while most of the heroine's default outfit is that of a generic-looking school uniform, specifically Sume Private Academy, the school Takumi attends, all the heroines do have at least one other outfit that either shows off some of their personality through their clothing style or signifies an important turn in the story. So the character sprites, while not as visually grand as newer titles like the gorgeous artwork in Atri My Dear Moments, still bring these characters and their various emotions to life wonderfully. The background art can be very rough around the edges and occasionally look like something out of a PS2 cutscene. That being said, there is a great variety of backgrounds, and a lot of the central ones to the story, such as the inside of Takumi's shipping container that he lives in, has a lot of detail and says a lot about either the characters or their environment. And honestly, this more rough and jagged looking background art works very well with the tone of Chaos Head Noah's story. As the story becomes more claustrophobic, tense, and nerve-wracking, you can't even get reprieve by focusing on the pretty-looking background art. You're in the same ugly and terrifying world Takumi is stuck in. That's why the more subdued character sprites work so well too. They're not over-the-top and colorful like a regular anime-style visual novel. The characters' shifting emotions have to be read through subtle changes in their facial expressions or their body language. While this is a story that will go towards some pretty out there places with its sci-fi themes and concepts, it is a grounded and personal story at its core, and you feel the weight of every major decision, turning point, or emotional circumstance that Takumi finds himself experiencing thanks to the fitting artwork of this visual novel. And there's never a piece of bad background art, it's just a lot of it can be noticeably dated and rough looking. Again, I like it and think it works well for the story, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. The CGs in this visual novel are also great. While some of them can be a bit janky or goofy looking, there's a real charm to when these pop up and highlight important and memorable moments in the story. And while I said some of them can be janky looking, that's far from the majority. These CGs are so damn good with their composition, lighting, and just overall art quality. There's a good chunk of them too, and they're used to great effect, whether it be bringing Takumi's insane delusions to life, or building suspense as things start taking a turn for the worse, or making the emotional moments hit that much harder. Chaos Head Noah has an abundance of great CGs that further enhance the already great story. At times, they kinda have that more low-key or rough edge that I used to describe the background art earlier, but that helps make every action and every major turning point feel that much more impactful and weighty. It makes even the more bizarre or anime-ish moments and sequences have this gritty feeling that keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it just works so well with the story. Overall, while the artwork is dated and can be a bit goofy looking at times, it's all so well done and fitting with the style of this visual novel overall. The soundtrack is another highlight. I don't know how to describe what makes music good, but it's extremely ambient and fitting of the story. You have upbeat tracks for lighthearted or absurd scenes early on in the story, tense and ominous tracks for when the gruesome and bizarre events of the story start closing in on Takumi, slow and emotional tracks to make you cry more than I did when I realized how many pervy delusions I was going to have to sit through in order to get the positive person achievement on Steam. It wasn't worth it. Don't do it, Takumi's so damn horny. Don't read this during November, please don't. Exciting tracks for when things kick into gear, and anything else in between. And the opening song? I mean, it's Kaneko Ito. Come on. Her voice is beautiful, the lyrics relate to the story in a meaningful way, and the instrumentals are great. Each ending, including the heroine routes, has a unique ending song too, which are all equal parts memorable and fitting for the tone of the endings. Special props to the ending to Nanami's route for how it ties into the ending and tone of her route, the haunting and beautiful ending song to the Crying Sky ending, and the beautiful ending song to the true ending. Really, all the vocal songs, especially Find the Blue with how it's utilized in the story, are fantastic, but those are the ones that stood out most to me. The sound design in this visual novel is superb. For any tense or important moment, there's a perfectly fitting sound effect that plays and makes the moment feel that much more impactful, whether it be ominous build-up to make even the act of opening an email seem terrifying, eerie silence complemented only by the noise that character movements make, or crisp and rapidly firing sound effects that make any action sequence come to frantic life. Chaos Head Noah's sound design perfectly complements every facet of its intricate story. Some particular soundbites do play a lot, but they never become annoying in their repetition and always add to a scene rather than detract. The voice acting is another highlight. Every voice actor and actress bring their absolute A-game and manage to create voices for these characters that feels belonging in a visual novel, while also not feeling like a stereotypical anime voice. I don't know how to describe it properly, but the tone and delivery of so many of the characters, especially the heroines, could have fallen into generic anime territory, but a lot of the dialogue is subdued and purposeful, and it makes these characters feel that much more real. Their voices still match their anime-esque designs, but the delivery feels very raw, I guess. And that works very well with this visual novel's overall presentation and story. And they still all get the chance to cut loose, especially in the delusions. And you can tell that the voice actors and actresses probably had a blast with these moments. One particular cast member I want to give praise to is none other than Hiroyuki Yoshino as the main character Takumi. I do not think Takumi's journey would have hit nearly as hard without Yoshino's amazing voice acting. And I'm typically of the opinion that voice acting is a nice feature to have in a visual novel, but never necessary so long as the writing is strong. In the earlier parts of the story, you can feel the bile seeping from his words of disdain towards the 3D world and normies. It's honestly too good of a performance at times because, man, the amount of times I just wanted to punch Takumi was, well, more than it usually is for me when I'm reading a visual novel. He also does a great job at capturing Takumi's more awkward and anxious side during the earlier parts of the story. Hearing Takumi constantly trip over his words or accidentally stutter does such a good job at reinforcing how socially closed off he usually is. And the sheer desperation, vulnerability, and pain you can hear in his voice as the story tries its damnedest to break his mind. Man, so many scenes of this visual novel gave me chills thanks to Takumi's voice acting. Hiroyuki Yoshino manages to capture every aspect of Takumi's character, and the emotional range he demonstrates as the story intensifies and Takumi develops as a character is truly amazing. And once again, I do just want to say this level of top-tier voice acting can be found in every voiced character within this visual novel. The unique camera movements and overall scene direction is also another outstanding aspect to Chaos Head Noah's immersive presentation. The way the camera whips around quickly as Takumi questions if someone is standing behind him. The act of scrolling through a webpage becoming more intense than when I evade my taxes. The erratic typing of messages and anxiety of waiting for a response. Every scene is crafted with such care to make you feel exactly what Takumi is feeling, and it makes for one of the most unnerving and exhilarating pieces of horror storytelling I have ever read. Everything, from the beautiful and terrifying prose, the fitting soundtrack, the intense sound design, the amazing voice acting, and the aforementioned use of camera movements and just overall mastery of scene direction, it all comes together for one of the most impactful visual novel pieces of storytelling. You don't just read Chaos Head Noah, you experience it. The UI of Chaos Head Noah is also good. It's nothing extravagant, it's a bit bare bones, but this is an older visual novel so it's understandable. Still though, it's easy to navigate. It's styled after early 2000 PC interfaces, which matches the setting and tone of the story, and it gets the job done. What more can you ask for? I guess one thing that stood out to me as odd is the dialogue box doesn't actually list what character is speaking at any given time. Given you have voice acting and every character has a very distinct voice, so it's not like you're ever going to be confused on who is speaking. But that is one thing I felt was worth mentioning. The tips section is super helpful and informative, especially when it comes to the scientific concepts which can be hard to grasp when you first hear them in the story. The main menu is also stylized in a really cool way, and it does the thing I love in visual novels, which is when the title screen changes after the true ending, with an image or style which fits more in line with the tone of the final ending and its themes. You also have a music and CG gallery, so you can always have quick access to some of your favorite tracks or pieces of artwork from the visual novel. And lastly, you have a chapter select tool that unlocks after your first playthrough, which makes hopping in and out of various moments of the story even easier than it already is with the skip function. When you use the skip function, it does get interrupted anytime a delusion trigger pops up, but all you have to do is make your decision, positive, negative, or neutral, which means no delusion, and then you can get right back to skipping previously read text. This interruption of the skip function didn't bother me at all, but for those who might want a more effective way of hopping around this lengthy story, the chapter select tool is a nice thing to have. So yeah, I know I started off this section by saying the UI is a bit bare bones, but I still think it has a lot to offer, and most importantly, it's functional. Let's begin wrapping up things in this video. So overall, Chaos Head Noah is a visual novel with an amazing and unique story, which is brought to life wonderfully with sometimes dated, but overall fantastic presentation. This terrifying and gruesome story which will keep you guessing what's a delusion and what's real, never failed to keep my interest, as our loathsome main character Takumi is thrust into a series of bizarre murders as strange characters start spouting off sci-fi concepts that actually have some basis in real-world science. It's a story that's bold and confident with its blending of genres and stylish presentation, and in all its madness and insanity, it still manages to craft a personal and compelling story with important takeaways for all those who read it. While some of the character routes could have been better, and I wish they could have been implemented into the main story in some way, the overall quality and ambition of Chaos Head Noah's story is something I have no issue in saying should be experienced by all. So long as you don't mind some slower earlier chapters which mainly focus on setting the stage for the overarching story and characters, and you can resist the temptation to punch the screen whenever Takumi says, well, almost anything regarding normies and three-dimensional woman, you are in for an amazing experience. And that is why I rate Chaos Head Noah a 7 out of 10. You can buy Chaos Head Noah on Steam or Nintendo Switch for $25, although I would highly recommend doing the Steam version if you are able to, so you can install the Committee of Zero overhaul patch. But $25 is a more than reasonable price for the length and quality of Chaos Head Noah's story. Now onto the Who is Best Girl segment of the video, and the best girl of Chaos Head Noah is Kishimoto Ayase. One word: goth. In all seriousness, she is a very interesting character, from her introduction, to her role in the story, to what we come to learn about her in her character route. Ayase is a mysterious and fascinating character, and she sings in a band which is pretty neat, not to mention the actual Phantasm songs that are out there are really damn good. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed my review of this visual novel. For anyone who has played Chaos Head Noah, what did you think of it? Do you agree with my score? And what was your favorite heroine route from this visual novel? I think it's quite obvious I enjoy talking about visual novels, especially ones that I just finished, such as Chaos Head Noah. So talking about this title that would kickstart one of the most successful and well-known visual novel franchises still going on to this day sounds like a good time to me. And speaking of this science adventure series of visual novels, if you follow me on Twitter or read my community posts, you might already know this, but if not, this video is actually the start to my science adventure series review marathon. That's right. I will be going through every mainline science adventure series title that is important or canon to the overarching story of the series, all the way through to the most recent entry, Anonymous Code. Unfortunately, I will not be covering titles that do not have an English translation, which means sadly no Chaos Head Love Choo Choo or Chaos Child Love Choo Choo. But aside from those, even if it's not in visual novel form, I will cover it. Which means I will be talking about the Steins Load Region of Déjà Vu movie, as well as the Occultic 9 light novels and anime. I won't, however, be going over each entry's various adaptations for this series, which means I won't be going over the Steins Chaos Head, Robotics notes, or Chaos Child anime or manga adaptations. In the future I might. Hell, I'd even go so far as to say I'm 99% sure I will at some point, due to my love for this series and desire to talk about its various adaptations. But for this series, I will only be covering the non-visual novel entries when they offer new and important story content that can't be experienced elsewhere, such as the Steins anime sequel movie or the Occultic 9 anime and light novels. The thing that inspired me to start this series was the English release of Anonymous Code back in September of this year. Ever since I first read Steins back in 2015 or 2016, I can't remember exactly when I first started it, I have been an avid fan of this series. And getting to see more and more titles in this series which didn't have official English translations receive localizations thanks to Spike Chunsoft over time was amazing. Sadly, when Chaos Head Noah was first released in English, I didn't have the time to read it, and then I got sidetracked with other stuff, both in my personal life and on my channel for quite some time. But then Anonymous Code came out, and the hype surrounding its release and the immensely positive reception to it got me excited too. But there was a couple problems. While I had read a good chunk of these science adventure series titles up to that point, apparently, one of the most crucial ones to Anonymous Code is Chaos Head Noah, the one mainline title in English I currently hadn't read. And not only that, but apparently Anonymous Code is supposedly a culmination and love letter to the science adventure series as a whole, and it's just been a while since I've read a lot of these titles, and I want to appreciate Anonymous Code as best I can. If it's some monumental entry for this amazing series with some of my favorite pieces of storytelling ever, well, I want the full experience. I want to be able to appreciate and understand everything it's saying about the series and its story, so I decided, why the hell not? I love so much of this series, it's been a while since I've read a lot of them, so getting to re-experience them will be really cool. It'll make for a fun first ongoing visual novel review video series on my channel, and I'll get to experience Anonymous Code as it was intended. So, let the Science Adventure Series Marathon begin. I hope you all are looking forward to it as much as I am, and if you haven't read any Science Adventure Series visual novels before, I hope I can either convince you to give the series a shot, or just provide you some entertainment with my reviews and interpretations of each entry. One aspect of this I'm really looking forward to is experiencing this series in chronological order, as I started this series with Steins and then just kinda bounced around to whatever I could consume from this series in English. And while these titles are all mostly standalone with occasionally connecting concepts, themes, and characters, getting to see how the Science Adventure series evolved over time and the overarching story that'll come from that, I mean, what can I say? I'm very excited. The next visual novel review actually won't be a part of this series though, as it will be for a visual novel I received review codes for quite some time ago. And it's about time I get to it now that my channel is finally in an active state again after doing, well, almost nothing in 2022. And of course, the Review Starlight videos will continue typically in between each visual novel video. I look forward to the future of this channel, and I thank you all for watching these videos and joining me on this ride. This series will probably start in earnest in early 2024. Before truly wrapping up this video, thank you as always to the great editor of this video, OtakuBox. A link to his channel is in the description, and I highly recommend checking out some of the cool stuff he has on his channel, such as his most recent upload as of recording this video, which is about insomniacs after school. I wouldn't be able to get these visual novel review videos, or the Review Starlight ones uploaded at the pace I have been, if it wasn't for your skilled and fast editing work. And I appreciate the work you do on this channel. And for everyone watching, please give his channel a look. Thank you again to everyone for watching this video. Look forward to my future Science Adventure series and Review Starlight content, and I will see you all in the next video. Oh, and I just had a thought more terrifying than anything in Chaos Head Noah. One of the titles I will be reading and reviewing in the Science Adventure Series Marathon will be the Steins spin-off Linear Bounded Phenogram, which is actually the first video I made on this channel, which means I will have to rewatch that video to see if my opinions changed, and I'll have to see how cringy it is with my monotone narration and bad editing, and, well, with all the sleep I won't be getting tonight now, I guess I can at least start reading the next visual novel to review on this channel. I love my life.